迎在場嘅來賓翻到嚟我哋嘅論壇賽馬會股長創成功里程論壇，我係今日嘅大會司儀 Kelly， 大家好。
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to all of you. Welcome to day 2 of the Clap at JC Conference 2024. My name is Desmond So, and I'm delighted to be one of your MCs today.
Hello， 非常之高興咧，又再次見到大家啦。咁喺琴日嘅論壇裏邊咧，我哋討論咗幾個重要嘅議題，包括係有效嘅生涯發展工作點樣提升學生嘅幸福感，喺工作世界裏邊點樣定義人才、工作同埋成功，仲有優質嘅職專教育點樣為唔同志趣嘅青年人提供公平機會同埋多元發展出路等等㗎。Desmond 今日繼續會有精彩嘅討論，即將我哋會進行嘅題目咧就係生涯發展自評基準，點樣為全球升學就業輔導提供一個有系統嘅方法喎。
That's right, Kelly. Yesterday we had a very fruitful day. At yesterday's conference, we had discussed some very important topics, including quality career guidance impacts on student well-being, how workplace redefines talent, work, and success, and how quality vocational education promotes multiple pathways and provides equitable opportunities to level the playing field. Well, today we'll continue to host dialogues with our speakers at the conference. To kickstart our morning, we'll have a discussion on how Benchmark promotes quality provision of career and life development to promote good transition. Without further ado, let's welcome the speakers of today's keynote to the stage. First off, we have Dr. Anthony Mann, Senior Policy Analyst, Education and Skills, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD.
首先，我哋有請經濟合作暨發展組織高級政策分析師、教育與技能 Anthony Mann 博士。
Professor Stephen I, Department of Social Work, the Chinese University of Hong Kong.
香港中文大學社會工作學系倪石欽教授。
Dr. Stephen Yip, Project Director, Research and Development Office, the Education University of Hong Kong.
香港教育大學研究與發展事務處項目總監葉任榮博士。
And our moderator for this session is Dr. Jeremy Fox, CEO Asia Pacific Generation.
Generation 亞太區行政總裁 Jeremy Fox 先生。
And as you can see behind us, we are delighted to have one more speaker joining us online. He is Mr. Ryan GIBSON, Senior Advisor, Gatsby Foundation.
我哋今日仲會有一位線上嘅嘉賓係嚟自 Gatsby Foundation 高級顧問 Ryan GIBSON 先生嘅。
A reminder to all our attendees today, we will have a Q&A session. After the session, we encourage you to ask lots of questions. There will be a mic set up here on your left side. For those of you joining us online, you can pose your questions through Zoom.
咁溫馨提示啦，我哋喺完成論壇之後咧，就會有 Q&A section， 有興趣發問嘅觀眾咧，可以嚟到台前嘅位置稍後，咁我哋會有工作人員安排發問㗎。
Dr. Fox, let us turn things over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have a lot to get through in this session and a bit of short on time, so we're going to jump right into it. I think you are kicking us off, are you not, Anthony?
I am. Good morning, everybody. Let's see, I'm going to stand up because I'm going to point towards some things on the big slides behind me once they come up. So I'm going to talk to you this morning, maybe if I go over this side, and it's easy. So I'm going to talk to you this morning about what's behind the benchmarks, what's behind benchmarks in general. You know, what is some of the evidence we have behind benchmarks? Because benchmarks should mean something when we're talking about the CLD, because benchmarks should be linked to evidence and they should be linked to a strong conceptual understanding about how change happens and why it's a good thing that it happens. And I'm just going to focus on one or two areas which we've been working in particular at the OECD. These relate particularly to the engagement of employers in the life, the career development, the CLD of young people. So I am going to share with you some of the evidence that we have, international evidence, particularly longitudinal data. And that's really important because in this area of CLD, it's quite hard sometimes to know what works. We're doing it because we want to see what happens to young people 5 years later, 10 years later. We have these interventions because we think it improves their lives. They will do better than otherwise. And so we use these longitudinal data sets which follow people over time, the same people, 10 years after they're 15, at 18, at 21, at 25, and then we can test to see if things really do make a difference. And so over the last few years, we've looked at the available longitudinal data sets in multiple countries, and what we find is that there's some very strong patterns. That what we find is that you can see relationships between the things that teenagers do around age 15, age 16, and what their lives are like 10 years later. And so we have these statistical controls to make sure it's not their qualifications which is dictating things, or their gender, or their social background. And we look for better outcomes in terms of lower unemployment, higher wages, greater job satisfaction. And this is what we find. We find that there are 3 big clusters of forms of career development which really do make a difference. And these relate to how young people explore the future, they experience the future, and they think about their future. And we can see strong relationships here between different forms of better satisfaction for young people. Now, one thing you'll see here is that quite a few of these seem to relate to the involvement of employers and people in work in the career development of young people. A lot of them do. It's a really strong pattern. And there's very strong evidence that when young people engage with employers, it really does make a difference. And in Hong Kong, this links to the idea of meaningful encounters with the world of work. And so what we would see is that there's a very strong evidence basis for this. But later I'm going to talk about how do we conceptualize, how do we make sense of it, how do we make sense of the change which we think we're seeing. But let me first show you some evidence from PISA. Now, yesterday you heard from Andreas, my boss, about the Program for International Student Assessment. 750,000 students, 15, all the way around the world, and we get lots of information about them, about their participation and in a whole range of different activities, as well as their achievement in reading and science and maths. Now, here is a selection of countries, and what we see is, we ask students in this, did you go to a job fair? Have you been to a job fair? Now, you see here in Hong Kong, in 2018, fewer than 10% of students had said they'd been to a job fair. 4 years later, 2022, over 40%, above the OECD average now. That's good. So well done, Hong Kong, you're making this happen. So we see sort of like a big change here, and that's a great opportunity for many young people to engage with people in work, to talk about things which they're interested in. But we have 2 other areas where the progress isn't quite so good. This is, we ask people if they job shadowed or been on a worksite visit. Here's Hong Kong over on the side. The participation rates have doubled, but still, by the age of 15, 8 out of 10 young people in Hong Kong haven't visited a workplace through their school, they haven't job shadowed. Now, this is relatively, even across the OECD, it's only a third or more, but this is a really useful experience for young people. And then if we look at internships, again, we see quite low levels of engagement in Hong Kong. The great majority of students want to be on a work placement. They want to spend time, in a workplace, working, getting first-hand experience. And we see this is really valuable for young people. Now, we can unpack these figures because we've got some data. This is an ongoing process for us. We're still working on this data. It's quite new to us. But one thing you can see here is that we can see in general, this is about the job fair. This is just Hong Kong. And you can see that this is quite typical. Boys more than girls tend to have these experiences. But SES here is the socioeconomic status of the students. And there's a pattern there, isn't there? So the more advantaged, the wealthier your background is, the more likely it is that you've been involved in a job fair. Now that we see this pattern there, let's have a look. Job shadowing and worksite visits. And again, you see the same pattern. The more advantaged you are, the more likely it is that you participate in these activities. And then we kind of see again internships. Again, we kind of see a similar pattern across this. And again, sort of like boys more than girls, sort of like sort of experiencing this engagement. But overall, we see progress in Hong Kong. And and I know that's very much in line with the kind of the policy agenda here. But let's take a moment to think about, look at some of the evidence. How do we conceptualize this? When young people sort of like engage with people in work through their career development, when they engage in high quality career guidance activities, what happens to them as they explore, experience, think about their futures? And we find it's really helpful for us to think about what are the characteristics which help decide who gets which job in the labor market. And it's about the qualifications and experience that you have. It's the people you know. It's who will give you a reference, who will recommend you. Are you well placed to present yourself as somebody who is comfortable and well fitted for a particular job? And you see there's whole academic literature about these things, about human, social, cultural capital. And we want to create a virtuous circle for young people, which is why the comprehensive benchmarks are such a good idea. And I just want to finish now by just showing you one quick thing. I've run on too much time, have I, Jeremy? I'm on time? Okay. Now, how things interrelate. Now, one of the things which you saw yesterday, when Andreas presented to you, was something we called misalignment. So we kind of asked students, what job do you expect to get? Now, in Hong Kong, you're very ambitious. 85% of Hong Kong teenagers who say who know what job they want to have, say they're going to be a senior manager or a professional. Now, that's only about 20% of the actual people in jobs, so, there's a problem there. But what's very common is that for young people, will often say, well, I expect to have that job, but I'm not going to go to university. Well, maybe you'll get that job as a senior manager or a professional without going to university, but it's the established route. And so what we see here is we can have this, there's a very good test you can do. You can ask young people, what job do you expect to get? Do you expect to go to university? If there's underestimation, if they're misaligned, and we find it's more working class students, poorer students who are much more likely to be misaligned, we can see that 10 years later, their outcomes are going to be worse. They're confused about how to invest in their education well. But what we can see here, so in Hong Kong, we see this pattern that, lots of people in Hong Kong want to go to university, as well as having these good jobs, but you still see this pattern, this underestimation, this misalignment. And the lower CS students, much more likely than the higher CS students. But if students, and this is Hong Kong, if they've been involved in career development activities, we can see, and these are these individualities, we haven't collectively put them together yet, but you can see the way that, particularly things like job fairs, talking to career advisors, completing career questionnaires, make it much less likely, the odds ratio decreases, the odds are less, that they will be misaligned, they'll have a better understanding of what they want to do. So this comprehensive way of approaching career guidance has multiple efforts, and we need to see it as a kind of a virtuous circle we want to create for young people. I'm sure I've run over. I'm very sorry if I have. They're my conclusions. Scientific evidence makes a difference. These benchmarks provide a minimum expectation, but we need to root them in evidence. And it's really important to take away from the message, good guidance makes a difference. So thank you very much. On to our next speaker.
I think you're okay, actually. That was pretty good on time. That is really, really encouraging to start to see the progress in Hong Kong. We're going to move to Ryan. We're going to get onto the screen, I believe, for the next. Yeah, thank you. Hey, Ryan.
Hey, everyone, and good morning, everyone. And I wish I could be with you in person in Hong Kong, but it's my pleasure to be able to join you online. I'm Senior Advisor for Careers at the Gatsby Foundation. I'm thinking about the next 10 years of good career guidance in England and leading the Gatsby Foundation's work on that agenda. I did have the pleasure of leading the original Gatsby benchmark pilot in England. I'm just going to share with you over the next 8 minutes or so some of the lessons that we learned from that pilot and the product of that pilot in England. Next slide, please. Now, Anthony said career guidance matters, and it absolutely does. And I suppose Anthony alluded to a theory of change model, and at Gatsby we know that career guidance does matter, and actually in its simplest form, we believe that every young person has an entitlement to really good career guidance. And for us, that's defined by evidence-based benchmarks, the Gatsby benchmarks in England that describe what good looks like. If you have those high quality inputs, then that individual is able to develop career management knowledge and skills. And by developing those knowledge and skills, that enables them to make more informed choices about their future study or training, and will hopefully lead them to sustaining their destinations. And ultimately, and we saw this in the video clips as you ended the venue this morning, we want individuals to experience a career which is financially and socially and emotionally rewarding. And so at the heart of the Gatsby benchmarks in England is this idea of social mobility. If young people know more about the range of careers open to people with the right skills and qualifications, then they have a clearer idea of the routes to more and better jobs. Next slide, please. And if I just take you back to 2014 in England very briefly, there were certain career guidance responsibilities on schools, but there was no centralized national strategy for careers. And there was no real detail behind what schools should be providing. And so Gatsby set out to define what career guidance looks like when it's good for young people. Next slide, please. And to do that, we made a series of international visits. Hopefully this slide will move on.
Next slide, please.
Yeah, there we go. And you'll see that we visited six countries. And we were delighted to come to Hong Kong and identify elements of excellent practice there. We added evidence from the 6 international visits to research and literature reviews, to a series of school visits in England, and we surveyed 10% of English schools. Next slide, please. And that enabled us to create what we called the 8 Gatsby benchmarks. 8 benchmarks underpinned by international evidence that clearly define what good looks like. And each benchmark is broken down not only into its title, which you see on the screen, but a definition and a series of measurable criteria. And underpinning that measurable criteria are a series of opportunities, encounters, and experiences that are meaningful for young people. Next slide, please. And we tested these benchmarks in a pilot with 16 schools and colleges in one region. And we were looking to build capacity within and between schools. We were testing the impact of the benchmarks in action, both on outcomes for young people and their impact on whole school and college culture. And we were looking to identify problems and barriers to implementation, and keen to identify solutions and opportunities to overcome these barriers so that we could create a sustainable and replicable approach that could be applied at scale across the country. Next slide, please. And our starting points, schools were to audit themselves against the benchmarks. And actually, when they did that, we found 50% of schools started by achieving no benchmarks. And in our pilot, no school achieved more than 3 benchmarks, which I think really highlights the world-class standard of the benchmarks. After 1 year, schools made some progress, but where they really made progress, I suppose, was in meeting elements of all of the benchmarks without quite fully achieving them all. 2 years into the pilot, and by the end of the pilot, you see the first 3 schools in England had achieved all 8 benchmarks, and no school achieved less than 4. So really good progress in 2 years. And next slide, please. And we saw a direct link between improved benchmark performance and improved career readiness of young people. So young people more ready to move into the world of work and future study. Next slide, please. And what we identified is leadership and leaders are absolutely crucial in this process. So the crucial role of the careers leader, the person that brings the careers program together, brings that strategy together and implements that strategy in their school. They, to be effective, have to be empowered by senior leaders, head teachers and principals who enable them to do their job well. And then the school requires some support at a regional or strategic level from external partners. Next slide, please. And we were delighted in England that the government decided to adopt the benchmarks and place it as central to a new national careers strategy. Next slide, please. And that strategy expects every school and college now to work towards achieving all 8 benchmarks. It requires schools to have a careers leader and to publish their careers program. And there's now a national organisation in England known as the Careers and Enterprise Company who are in place to support schools to meet all 8 benchmarks. Next slide, please. And from our own research last year at Gatsby, we can see that belief in the value of the benchmarks is strong and widespread. So 94% of stakeholders from education and business have stated that the benchmarks are the strong framework for career guidance. We've got in England now almost universal adoption, with over 90% of schools now measuring their progress against the benchmarks every year, and benchmark performance has increased every year since 2017. And crucially, every element of the benchmarks, each individual benchmark, is recognised as a crucial part of the overall framework of 8 benchmarks. And 9 out of 10 senior leaders can see a clear benefit of the benchmarks on their young people. Next slide, please. And we see growing impact. So we've got a strong evidence base built now over 10 years, which show that implementing the benchmarks increases awareness of apprenticeships, technical education, and improves destination outcomes. We see a correlation with improved career readiness and increased motivation of young people who are able to make better study choices. It makes it easier, the framework of the benchmarks, for employers to engage with education, and it reduces the likelihood of young people becoming not in education, employment, or training when they leave school. And that effect is particularly enhanced for disadvantaged young people. Next slide, please. And I said particularly enhanced, and we see actually if all 8 benchmarks are achieved, then 10% more students will make a successful transition compared to if no benchmarks are achieved. And that effect is doubled for those most disadvantaged. And next slide, please. And so the benchmarks are now at the center of the system in England. And we see that having a careers leader has enabled the benchmarks to have impact, but actually now we have a training program for career leaders. And when we have, we've got over 3,000 career leaders trained in England. And when we have a careers leader who is trained, they achieve significantly more benchmarks than those who are not. And we've got a national network of career hubs, so over 90% of schools and colleges are in a careers hub now. And those that have been in a hub for the longest time, a network coming together to support careers, they achieve, on average, 6 benchmarks, so they achieve above what is now the national average. And next slide, please. And we've seen the benchmarks achieve impact because they're underpinned by international evidence of what works. They define what good looks like, and they define a world-class standard. They, in England, have created a shared common language around what good looks like, and crucially, they're measurable at a school and college level and at a national or regional level, making it possible to demonstrate progress and impact, help with planning, and can guide where investment should go. And just a final thought from me, our work and all of the evidence that we've gathered to date suggests that there is still no single magic bullet for good career guidance. It's about doing all of the things identified in the benchmarks, doing them consistently, doing them well, doing them for each and every young person, and doing them for a sustained period of time. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ryan. It is amazing in only 10 years how well this has been entrenched and embedded in the UK. We will definitely talk about that a little bit more, but we want to get into the Hong Kong situation. Stephen.
Okay, so hello. So how about Hong Kong situation? After hearing about the good news, 10 years development into the national policy. First of all, I have to comment about the title of this session. It's called The Good Transition from School to Work, through the benchmark. I think the good, that word good, is very important because a lot of people, I think no one will dispute the effect of CLD into young people's life. But the most important part is whether are we going to do it well. This is matter. It's the paradigm of from good to great. Okay, now, can we change the PowerPoint first of all? I was actually talking just in case that you haven't done it yet. So now that's the PowerPoint. Okay, so first of all, I have to say, Hong Kong actually have its own situation. You cannot just, transplant any foreign model into another country or a region that have a different context. So let me just explain the Hong Kong pain points or sometimes the context that is maybe different from the Western world. So the first things we need to say is Hong Kong actually have a very, very high stay-on rate to further education. We're talking about 93%. So Chinese like studying. So this is one thing that we're actually really, really profound in here. I know that in quite a lot of Western countries have only something like 70 to 80%. Second point is actually most of these Hong Kong situation have a very low self-agency. That means they are actually less motivated in terms of getting into activities like what Anthony's been saying, giving us the figures. Student participation generally, according to 2018, is really low. let me show you, because I haven't got Anthony 2022 figures yet. This morning, I just learned it. But you can see that the actual OECD average is talking about 46%, but Hong Kong actually got 34%, according to Anthony's report, previous report. We actually want to see the next report later. But we can see that there is a very, very big gap between the net international standard. And also, in school, the teacher, especially the career teachers, we found it through our survey commissioned by the EDB, done by Education University. In 2019, we found that most teachers are working in silo. That means they actually do it by themselves without any senior management support, profound support. Yes, they do, but the principal also not very sure what is their position, what is their landscape, how they can actually, what are the roles, active roles in terms of career education. So this is another pain point. The fourth pain point is about parents. And the parents is because of the cultural situation, we call it, in our academic world, we call it the Confucian heritage culture, which is mainly on the family as the basic unit. And career planning supposed to be belongs to the family. So we actually have a term called filial piety. And this term, 孝道, that term actually means that, sometimes, you need to listen to the parents in this. So there is basically a kind of a tension there. So that we have actually, for John Hellman, the benchmark author, we actually wrote something about this to find out more about this. But luckily, one thing is the strength, not pain point, is we got the policy address in 2014, have a more comprehensive concept of career guidance. We call it the career and life planning education in Hong Kong. And that actually makes a lot of difference. So that's why we can see a little bit of boost in the figures from Anthony, OECD figures. So, but it's still not yet done the job, as the data tells us. And it's the whole school approach that we need to move forward. And this is actually the benchmark that is suitable for the Hong Kong schools. And we've been experimented with 125 schools adopting it, and the experience seems to be working really well. Hong Kong actually have 10 benchmarks, and we actually treat it as HKBM as the world-class guiding principles of the benchmarks to do good CLD. One thing we learned, I have to say, there is a great credit from the UK Gatsby benchmark and also the OECD inspiration. And also, there's another great credit, is what we call the CLAP at JC Phase 1. We have a lot of good knowledge that we come from. And altogether, we actually found that there are 10 benchmarks of that. And there are 2 additional, if you actually been very, very clear-minded, when you hear about Ryan's sharing, you will find that they have 8, but Hong Kong got 10. We are not greedy, but we are actually thinking that there are 2 are very important. One is about student. They need to increase or even enhance their student agency in order to co-create their own life, but not only co-create their own life planning, but also with their peers. So we have that, and also the parents' engagement. That's another thing. And most importantly, all the content itself have to be in line with the policy address, the policy. Not only about the career guidance policies, but also the school QA, quality assurance. We call it the school self-evaluation. And that is very important for school to actually go into. So the Hong Kong benchmark is with the QA system. Okay, so another perspective is we actually see Hong Kong benchmark as a process, not only just the framework. We actually put some add-on kind of value-adding types of interventions. When the schools say, okay, I haven't got enough networking with business, then we have enterprise advisor. If you haven't got any sort of support or idea or concept about supporting at-risk students, we can have something called the alternative pathfinder schemes to help them. So we have this is actually a manual for schools to add on to make sure they can actually keep up with the benchmarks. So what are the results in Hong Kong? With the first 50 schools, we found that we have 25% improvement just for 1 year. So that is encouraging effects on that. Second, more and more schools spreading the good news, saying good words about the project, and it's now getting into 1/3 of Hong Kong secondary school joining it. And I'm still receiving application now, okay? And so that's something that we can go on to make sure we'll be mainstreaming. Back to Anthony statistics. Remember this? This is exactly the OECD framework. All the different activities of careers, there's 9 activities, all surpassing not only just the 2018 results. You can see they are surpassing the Hong Kong average in every aspect. I just learned it this morning, and all of them. So it's sometimes double. So now Hong Kong is good to have a policy, but now to have a systematic way to increasing student participation. So we can see very clearly this is the right way to go. Okay, another thing you will say, how about career readiness? As Ryan's been saying, we can see that, we actually sample with the non-BM school, with the BM school, with students paired longitudinal data, as been saying, we found that there is a very big significant effect that the BM adopted school will have better students to have better career readiness in doing this. So, of course, today, if you really want me to talk through all these data, it needs a separate, kind of conference, school-based conference for that to do it. But keep in view, that will be one. Okay, and then the last thing, we need to track more longitudinally, and also we will track even the school leavers in the post-sec. And luckily, we have Professor Stephen Chiu, a sociologist, and also psychologist, and also school improvement experts to help us to get this better. So we still got time to recruit more schools to actually join and see the good results. Thank you very much.
Thanks. And we definitely want to get into a bit more of the next steps for Hong Kong and when we get to the discussion. But, Prof, it's over to you.
Good morning. So having listened to Anthony's overview and Ryan's the UK experience, and also from Dr. Yip about the school experience, now I'd like to share with you how about the community, the NGO sector. So today I'm going to share with you how to facilitate good transition for disadvantaged young people. And we will focus on the Hong Kong benchmark community. So in 2021, the CHK team, together with our 6 NGO partners, we could create the world's first community version of the HKBM. So we have this consideration. So while we have a lot of young people in school, but actually we can also see there are a lot of young people, what we call the NEY, or non-engaged young people. They have already been disengaged from the school sphere. So and their daily activity happened in the community. So we are wondering, how about if we really engage this group of young people so that we connect with different sectors of the community, like school, family, business, and also community youth center. Maybe we will be able to enable them to have better access to CLD opportunities and also broader career networks. So with this kind of thinking, we think about, just like Anthony mentioned, to increase their social connectivity and also social capital. We believe that maybe this will enable them, we can benefit them, and eventually benefit the society. So with this kind of consideration, so we developed an intervention under the HKBM community framework, also in that year. So now I'd like to share with you about the HKBM community. Dr. Stephen Yip had just shared with you about the unique adaptation in Hong Kong. So for the community, we also benefit from the school experience. So we increased the Gatsby benchmark from 8 to 10. But in the NGO sector, we have some site adaptation. So we also divided the HKBM into 3 parts. The core part, which is the black color, which is about building visible and stable agency policy, together with designated team, with professional competence and leadership. So we think that this kind of organizational-based CLD practice is really important because leadership, commitment is the most essential. So the other major part is about the youth-focused part. So Stephen just shared with you about co-creation. So we also think that even for NEETs, it's really important to have their agency. And actually, they can exhibit this kind of agency. So we focus a lot on personal needs, access to the latest career information, to be the right, be the master of their CLD journeys, and also individualized guidance. Last but not least, we really think that the most important part is about enabling environment, because it's really important to engage different stakeholders to support young people's development. So for that part, we are not connecting to school curriculum, but then to youth service plan, youth service intervention, and workplace, further education, and also having parental engagement and also support. And in this part, we also adopt a systematic kind of self-improvement. Here I'd like to emphasize that we deeply believe that for something to be sustainable, we need to do it internally so that our NGO colleagues, they can really take ownership about their own action. That means their CLD service provision. In the process, they can build this kind of continuous service improvement cycle that will really benefit. We can have champions, capacity building, eventually enabling long-term sustainability. So we also build in evaluation study for the intervention program. So we measure 3 indicators. One is the youth development, career development competence, what we call the YCDC. So it is concerned about ability to navigate school-to-work transition. We also assess career and life development hope, because we really think that hope is really important nowadays. So we try to understand hope like this. It's about young people's ability to think about their future, to develop goals, and also they can generate multiple routes to achieve this kind of goals. Finally, it's about career adaptability. It's about one's ability to use individual resource to master, to manage future career intervention. So we use a protest, quasi-experimental design with an intervention and also a control group. So we also conduct focus group with different kinds of stakeholders, including agency leaders, social workers, NEETs, parents, and employers. So here I'd like to share with you some of the quantitative findings. So from the line chart, you can see the red line will represent the intervention group. So you can see for YCDC, the intervention group, they all outperform the control group, no matter it is from time 1 to time 3, that means 4 months later. And also from time 1 to time 3, it's 1 year later. So similar pattern also happened for CLD hope and also for career adaptability. So regarding the focus group findings, we also identify 3 major themes. So the first theme is about providing global standard and guiding principle to review service and to promote multiple pathways. So we think that it is really important. And actually in our focus group, we heard a lot of story from agency leaders and social workers telling us that they have this kind of reflection and awareness. So in the past, they used to think that success is employment focus. So we find job for young people, But actually, for many on NGAI, they can find job today, but they quit tomorrow. Because after all, their jobs are not those jobs they're interested, or they're not decent jobs. So eventually, we have this kind of concern. But now, the agency leaders and social workers, they really think about, we listen to youth voices. Maybe they're looking for something different, like going back to school, like they want to start their own business, so they have different ideas. So now they have moved to think about multiple pathways and striving for different possibilities with young people together. So this is really, the impact is horizon, widening and broadening. So the other major theme we find is a youth-focused perspective. It's about enhancing young people's self-knowledge and affording them the good encounter with the workplace. So actually, in the HKBM community, we have embedded a lot of useful tools like CV360 and many innovative kind of intervention activities. And through this kind of intervention, young people come to know better about their interests, their talents, and also their dreams, and also their strengths. Eventually, they have better engagement, and such as internship. And actually, this kind of arrangement also facilitates different stakeholders like employer to understand young people better, so that eventually there are also better interaction between stakeholders like employers with young people. Here I'd like to share a story with you. We heard about a story from a boxing gym boss. So with the HKBM, he's inspired to to be more flexible, to be more understanding. So at the beginning, he won't urge the young people to start to engage in the boxing gym completely. So he started with some internship and also flexible working hours from part-time and then eventually to full-time engagement. So now the boss is so proud to share with us that he has some very committed, capable young people serving as full-time coaches in his boxing gym. So the first theme is about stressing a more egalitarian relationship. So here I'd like to share with you another story, which is about Salad Baby, which is a volunteer group co-created by social workers and also by young people, by the non-engaged youth, who are young mothers. So I heard from one NEY, a young mother, telling me that in Salad Baby, he's given so much autonomy that he can plan, design, and also organize volunteer activities so that eventually the whole group of young mothers are being empowered. They have better self-care, not only, but also they are being empowered to care for some others in the society. We also heard about stories about many parents. They come to know that they need to listen to their children patiently and also to care and support them from their children's perspective. So Stephen just shared about filial piety. And actually in Hong Kong, many parents, they are very anxious about their children's prospect. Last night, we visited Taibo, and even among some school dropouts, their parents still have the dreams that their children eventually will get into university. We heard about stories that many non-engaged young people, they have a lot of disputes and conflict with parents. So actually, parents used to think narrowly, and there are not much choices for young people. But now, in case parents are giving their children more space, actually, they're enabling their children to try out different pathways. Eventually, they would have more meaningful and fulfilling lives. So to conclude, today I share with you that about the experience of implementing the HKBM community. So we have three major conclusions. First, the HKBM community is really a powerful evidence-based framework, and as Stephen just mentioned, it's also a powerful process to enable our NGO practitioners to design high-quality CLD service. Our second conclusion is that with the solid empirical evidence, it is really justified to further promote the HKBM community to serve more non-engaged youth from multiple backgrounds. Finally, with the theorizing of the HKBM as core, youth-focused, and enabling environment. We think that this kind of conceptualization of good CLD practices can really be good references for some other regions in order to support non-engaged youth. So thank you.
Thank you. And I love the anecdotes. I love the success stories, especially in the Hong Kong context. So I'm going to pick on you. I know you have some stories you want to tell us. Can you just...
Okay. Right. Thank you for picking me. Right. Yes, I totally agree with that. Because the benchmarks, not only just a tick box or a kind of checklist for teachers say good practice and then I tick. But it is actually an ecological tool that is going into, embed into an institution, no matter it's a youth center or maybe a school, in the policy spine, so that they do things in order to do it. So it's an ecological a kind of powerhouse to do things. This is something that I got a story also about the parents. That's another thing. Now I'm not going to name any school names, right? Because somebody will going to assassinate me, okay? But I'm going to say something about, there's one story that has come from my neighbor, who is a middle class, right? Well, I'm middle class, right? And then there will be parents come to me and say, hey, Stephen, you are in education, and my child is in international school. But I got a really depressing news that suddenly heard about, his daughter was being told by the school that not listening to me, starting from Form 2. Don't listen to your parents, they said, the school. Because it's an international school, because they're not very culturally aware about, the culture that is embedded in the whole society. And this is actually, the benchmark is good, is about to make sure there's a tripartite types of collaboration. A lot of schools actually using, they were going to counseling together, and then let them to talk about that. And also parents' evening, they will have career CLD elements, but also when the parents are waiting, they go on to CLD, parental education activities. And all these kind of things help to loosen the whole thing about, because all of them are key players for our youngster CLD. I just want to add this point. And according to the anecdotal evidence, that we have found that, not only just in the school data, we not only found that activities is the most important thing. It's not. It's also, there's another route, is about the school ethos, the school environment, and the school leadership, how they use resources, how they set priorities, and all these counts and affecting the students a parcel in the local term. In the international terms, it's called social emotional being. And all these will contribute to the career readiness. And this is something that is the most important message to the school sector.
Thank you. And Ryan, I'm going to pick on you as well. Any success stories that you would like to share? And these things always come to life when we get to talk about some of the successes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll probably begin by just paying tribute to the work of the Hong Kong Jockey Club, Dr. Yip, Professor Nai. I've had the privilege of working with all of them on the Hong Kong benchmarks over the last 5 years, and it's tremendous to see the progress that's been made, including work with Generation as well on enterprise advisors, and that's been tremendous. What I'm reflecting on is the parallels in the UK, really, in England, and we've seen increased parental engagement. We've seen I remember when I was running the original pilot, I received a letter, or a head teacher in one of the schools received a letter from a parent saying, I'm not sure what you've done, but my child has been transformed. They come in now from school and they tell me about their day, they tell me about what they enjoyed, and they tell me about experiences they've had with employers. They tell me about a visit they've had to university. They tell me about some vocational training that they've had a taster session of. And that transformed not just that child's ability to think about career, but actually to think about themselves and to reflect on their own career journey. And I think one of the panelists said earlier, it's about broadening horizons and expanding hope. And I think we've certainly seen that. I think I would echo some of the things that have already been said. I think the benchmarks are about systematic self-improvement. So they're a self-improvement tool for schools. They're owned by schools. They're owned by the community. They're owned by institutions. In fact, in England, they're designed for institutions, but with the purpose of having impact on outcomes for young people. And in that sense, the benchmarks have become not just a common language, but an organizing framework. They help schools to think about the partnerships that they've already developed and the good practice that is already there. It enables a school to question those partnerships and to question exactly what are they getting out of those partnerships, and to really focus in on what is the impact we're trying to see. And I think that's the narrative shift that we've seen in the UK, and that certainly are seeing going forward, that shift from activity. I think schools start by doing more careers activity, then they think about the quality of that activity and they refine that activity. And as that activity refines, they think about, well, what is the intended outcome? And now we're seeing schools thinking about, well, what are our intended outcomes? And then mapping back to their activity. And that can relieve some of the pressure, because you could see careers as more things to do, a greater expectation. Well, actually, it's about refining the things that you're already doing, and weaving careers as a golden thread through all of that.
Thanks. Ralph?
Because recently, we have accumulated some longitudinal data in the Club JC community project. We are tracing the young people by using the social worker administrative data, and then we follow them. Here, I'd like to share with you some more. So can you just move to the slide with the additional information about the positive impact? Yes, right. So we conducted some very powerful statistical analysis called the sequence analysis. And then among the non-engaged young people, we follow them from month 0 to month 22. And actually, we have the intervention group and control group. So here you can see actually for young people, the pathway nowadays is really fluctuated and really difficult. So we identify 5 major type of categories. The first one is fast transition to employment and also entrepreneurship. The other one is about continuous vocational training. The other one is about fast transition to education-related pathway. The other one is about continuous serious leisure, which means that young people, they are engaging in some intensive pursuit of interest. Finally, it's about the rewarded NEET. So maybe you may wonder, Stephen, you have intervention group, you have control group. What really happened to those 5 categories? Maybe next slide, please. So, here you can see. So for those fast transition to employment or entrepreneurship, you can see all of them are coming from the intervention group being inspired by the HKBM community. But how about for the rewarded NEET? All of them are from the control group who does not experience any CLD services being inspired by the HKBM. So we don't expect this kind of very powerful, very clear, this kind of findings. So actually, we build up further about the model for prediction. You can see that is really powerful, significant difference between the prediction of them falling into different kind of positive outcome. It not only happened for the employment, it also happened for the education pathway and also SLD. So here, I'd like to share with you, with this kind of longitudinal data, we like to add, actually, the HKBM idea about we need to individualize young people's personal list. We need to listen to them, co-create with them. So we start with interest development. And gradually, actually, we can follow them to see we start from interest. And actually, what they learn from their caring activity, from their pursuit of interest, it is transferable. What we call the non-paid work actually is really meaningful, helping them to have good transition. Here, I'd like to add HKBM, now in Hong Kong. We are accumulating more and more powerful findings. So we hope that later on, we can publish and share with some other regions.
Great.
I think it's so warmly to be welcomed, this focus on collecting data within the kind of the work the Hong Kong project does. And it's really to the testament of CLAP and the vision of the Jockey Club to see it's so important to collect real data, because this is a field which is remarkably under-researched. And when we have the good data, what we're able to do is start conceptualizing what's happening here. And that's really important because when we're developing these benchmarks, which are a really important way to frame an approach to guidance, it's really I think it's like the start of the conversation. And as we learn more deeply about how these processes of work and how we can really evidence change, I think we really want to get to a situation where it's well understood, the effective approaches which people in the youth community and in schools can do. And I think one of the things which I've really picked up, and I want to go back to the slides when we're looking at the Hong Kong model, was about the issues of equalities and inequalities within all of this. And there's a bit of a risk within when we benchmark that we think that there is like one size fits all. And that this is the minimum expectation. And as it turns into policy, it's like, well, 1 encounter a year, 2 encounters a year, tick, tick, tick. And what we find, and I think what others find, is that as young people go through education into the labour market, some young people, clearly definable groups of young people, face additional barriers. They face additional barriers to understanding the labour market linked to their own aspirations. And we know in Hong Kong and elsewhere, young people are very ambitious. They want to get on. But if you're from a family background where your family are middle class and professionals, you can provide advice and support for your child, which you can't do if you're not from that background. It's much more difficult. It's structurally more difficult. And when we look, and we've been doing this recently at the OECD, when we look at the early career outcomes of young people, same qualifications, same education levels, same set of skills, we can test for that, we find that social class has a big impact. Kids from low SES backgrounds, disadvantaged backgrounds, face additional barriers in converting their human capital into good employment. And there is a role for career guidance within this. It can help them have a better understanding of the information, can help them sort of like plot their pathway more effectively. It can reduce that misalignment. It can give them experiences. And we all know about unpaid internships now and all the issues there. So schools have a really important democratizing function. And so I think one thing we kind of always need to keep our eye on is, we want to make sure there's this minimum expectation of good quality for everybody. But if everybody gets the same, we can expect social reproduction to continue and this reduction of inequalities not to really change. And so I'll just give you one example. In Ireland, the schools in the lowest income areas, the poorest areas, they receive double the amount of funding from the government for career development activities with young people. Double the funding. And I think that's it's quite simple, but it speaks to, I suppose, the next step on where we become even more sophisticated in understanding, kind of what our data tells us about the relationship between experiences within education and how we can get to a more equitable future.
And it's not just the volume of support. I mean, the support that every individual needs is bespoke. We need to cater that to each individual. We do similar.
Yes, totally agree. Especially in school itself is an ecosystem itself. It is basically a very complex one. And also one thing that is happening is space finding. That's the main crux of the matter. It's about, there are so many initiatives going on in schools, a new initiative may be government initiated or maybe self-initiated, but there are space finding. But according to our survey, can you show some PowerPoints? I'll show you something about, actually, the changes is not only on the youth, it's also on teachers and also school leaders. And we found that 81% of career teachers think HKBM will help to reduce workload. And that is a smart doing things. Because a lot of things, when we talk about data, they all do data, but the main thing is do it smartly. And that HKBM is the systematic and smart way to use it and know that it's good for them because evidence-based. So it's good to do these few things and then move on to other things. So there is a kind of a resource reallocation and attention reallocation. And then not only that, that's also a plus and also a kind of gift. Is the next kind of a slide. It's about, we found that the qualitative data actually found that they are more creative in solving the school problem. And it's about, they will start to have more innovation to solve their school facing the problem. And one of our quantitative, and it's quite, I would say, very robust finding, is the benchmark will have the same sort of effects, positive effects, among different school banding. And that is something that is very important. That means, it will solve the problem of Anthony saying that there are some disadvantaged children will have a worse sort of outcomes by the school-based policy. But that actually will make all, because the benchmark says it's education for all. They actually have saying that 90% of the school student population have to do workplace, and 90% have to do junior secondary counseling. All these will make it very, very good for us to have a good standard. Lastly, and another slide, next one, is saying it's a catalyst for school improvement, because there will be more alumni, involvement, and most importantly, it's the principal effects we found. Principal will have more kind of involvement into CLD, which I think the EDB has already written down. Principal supposed to lead rather than career mistress or mister. So it's a principal effect that actually will involve them in the SSE, we call it the school self-evaluation. And that have to be accountable to the EDB. And that is the whole things will become into a good, accountable way. Moreover, actually, there is also school improvement about the partnership. Because in the past, we think the business world is only an instrument to help youth. But no longer. It's because we have enterprise advisor to each school. An enterprise advisor, according to our data, we found that these enterprise advisor will boost students' confidence and also participation by discussing with the school leaders. That means it's not about whether they're involved in the student activities, but actually, the most valuable thing is to involve them in the planning stage, to inspire the school leaders. And that is the valuable part. And that is the dialogic partnerships that we try to advocate. And that will happen to other subject teachers. Because, we found that the participation, the figures that have, about the OECD figures, and Hong Kong is getting better, and CLAP school even get better. That is the reason, because of not only just the business partners go into students' activity and share with them. No, it's also because they actually share the good wisdom to the subject teachers, to school leaders, to CLD teachers, so that they will know how to, cascade this good knowledge to help them to design the best school-based curriculum.
I'm going to squeeze. I'm out of time, but I'm stealing some more. So I actually want to just shift, because I really, really want to get into what's next for Hong Kong. So I would love to hear from both of you what you're planning, what do you think the next few years are for the benchmarks, and for Anthony and Ryan, what would your recommendations be about how to drive it forward? I actually had two questions. One was, pitfalls and lessons learned, but I'm kind of mixing them together. So kind of what do you have in store? Where do you think it's going next? And advice for Hong Kong as we move forward?
I think the next is to build a robust and flexible community of practice in Hong Kong. Is to using HKBM as the same language, to actually have a good sort of a professional community, to actually do, which we are doing it now, but I think it have to be meant to at least half of the school population. we are not very satisfied yet. A third is no good enough. I think we can get better. And that's sort of, something like at least half, so that we can influence in a systemic way to make sure there are good practices, not just good enough to be, we done CLD. We want to do great CLD. Like, we want to tackle different ways. But all the ways schools have different problems, but they can share resources, sharing alumni, and also sharing a lot of ideas, and also sometimes do joint programs, which we are doing it now. And these I will help.
Yeah, and getting to that critical mass and embedding, which I think Ryan will probably talk about in a second. Yeah, Prof?
Okay. So I may add, I think there are several ways that is very important. Because as I have just mentioned, so the HKBM community is the first community version of the BM in the world. So we really hope that we can accumulate more evidence on the effect, no matter if it's quantitative data and qualitative data. And at the same time, we can document the whole experience, our practice, and also case studies, and also different kind of good practice into good manual. And we can also share different kind of experience. I really think that we can accumulate this kind of what we call the knowledge management, so that we can have some platform. A lot of workers, they can freely accessible to this kind of practice wisdom. So for the long term, we really hope that think that the HKBM is really deserved. We can have some higher level institute, so that we can continuously to have three areas. One is to have empirical research independently, rigorously, to accumulate this kind of data in the school and also in the community. The other is about continuous training, because training is really important. In case we don't have the talent and also champions to promote the HKBM, we won't be able to sustainable. So finally, it's about how we can continuously have this kind of continuous documentation and knowledge transfer. So I really think that this kind of independent institute or academy is really important.
Advice?
I mean, I think the next step on is to go beyond, go underneath, dig into the benchmarks. Because I think there's kind of a wide consensus now that this kind of benchmarking approach, like you've done in Hong Kong, like we have seen in Gatsby, is a good framework. There's a lot of consensus that's a solid framework for good guidance. But we need to go a step further and then think about, well, what does it mean to have a meaningful engagement with the workplace? What does it mean to have personalized provision? And that's where the real detail is, and that's where the work that Stephen does is particularly, and it's done internationally, is so important. We need to share that and thinking about how much is enough. How much is enough for who? What are our indicators that somebody's on track, and what are our indicators that somebody needs more support? And we can use the data to do this, and that can provide for a more personalized approach, which is more efficient. And I think, will ultimately more, will give us greater confidence. So I think that's where we need to go next. And we need to do that in a very concerted way. I need to share all our international findings to make sure that see what's universal and what's particular in the way that young people actually make these movements. But that's really important because, one size often can seem to fit all, and that's not right.
Making it bespoke, but doing it in an efficient way, as opposed to just continuing to, put more money against the same effort. Yeah.
Yeah, we need, and this is where the conceptualizations become so important as well, because we need to equip, our community of practice here with a good understanding of what they're trying to achieve. And that's why we think the capitals analysis is so important. It's the right qualifications, the right experience, the right contacts, the right confidence, which is based upon an informed understanding of a workplace linked to yourself. And we can, and I think, when we see it, we know it, and it's not there. We know what's not there, but we need to be able to articulate that and ensure that it's underpinned by good evidence and provide simple means so the professionals can say, okay, I see where the gaps are, and I can help fill those gaps. And I think that's where we need to go.
Thanks. Ryan.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the shift that we're seeing and want to continue with is that shift from inputs to impact. So in England, we're exploring the development of a careers impact system, which digs beneath the benchmarks and encourages people to think in depth and detail, not just about the activity, but about the strategy, the levels of engagement, and the intended outcomes of provision, so digging beneath the content of the benchmarks. I think we want to see a shift, as that Anthony's alluded to, which is a move from just data collection to a better use of data to inform the support that young people need. I think schools in England are becoming more sophisticated as a result of the benchmarks in thinking about the balance between the universal offer, the targeted offer, and the tailored offer. And of course, the benchmarks might act as a universal framework, but at their heart are addressing the individual needs of every pupil. And I think, and we've heard it mentioned already this morning, that this is about developing the agency of young people, and I think we need to give more time to them to reflect on the learning, to make sense of the encounters, opportunities, and experiences that they've had, and to be able to get them to relate that to themselves, their own hopes, dreams, aspirations. I was in a school the other day with 1,000 pupils, and the head teacher said to me, we realize now we essentially have 1,000 career programs because we're tailoring our approach to the individual needs of every child. And whilst that might sound scary, it's just an evolution of the way of thinking about your careers program. So keeping young people at the heart, moving from inputs to impact, and a better use of data to drive those approaches. Things we want to maintain in the UK would certainly be the role of leaders. We want to make sure we've got that senior leader buy-in. We want to make sure there's access to training and continued access to networks, because career leaders really do value that. And in all of the evidence that we've gathered at Gatsby, when we're thinking about the next 10 years of good career guidance, every strand of evidence has told us what people really want is stability. They want this to continue. They want this to evolve, but they don't want wholesale change, because they can see the impact this is having on young people. So hopefully that's a positive message of stability. Let's maintain that trajectory of improvement.
Excellent.
All right.
Thanks for that. I think we do
Thank
have some time for
you.
Q&A, or
Yes,
have I
Dr. Frost,
completely chewed it up?
Yeah, we have time for one question. We would like the question from the floor. If anyone has a question, here is your chance. It's a very interesting topic. Does anyone have a question? If so, please move to the mic. Great. Please move to the mic and ask the question. Thank you very much, Elsie.
Thank you. So thank you so much for all the speakers, Jeremy, to facilitate these sessions. I found it really inspiring. So my question is around destination. So I've heard that Brian mentioned a bit on implementation of the benchmark can improve the destination outcome of the students. So could you share a little bit more about what that means? And to the plenary speakers, I would like to understand at OECD level, at the global level, do you have any advice? Does it make sense to track the destination? If yes, how are we going to do that? And to the two Stephens, I'm sure that through the CLAB effort over the last 9 years, we should have a lot of either students or youth data. So do you have any thought or plan from the academic point of view? How are we going to add or improve the rigor of these data to have better clarity, to show that quality CLD provision in what way can improve the destination outcome of our young people? Thank you.
Thank you.
Who wants to start? Ryan, she picked on you first.
Yeah, she did. And so I would say, I think it's all of our hopes, isn't it, that a young person goes on to flourish in their career, that they are happy in their career, that their emotional well-being is solid. So destinations are important. What we saw and what we continue to see is when all 8 benchmarks are achieved, we see 10% more students likely to make a successful transition. compared to if no benchmarks are achieved. And we see a doubling of that for students who are in the most disadvantaged of circumstances. What we also see is through the framework of the benchmarks, young people become more aware of all of the different pathways that are available to them, and they have encounters and they experience different providers, different pathways, so they can make more informed decisions. And this was my point earlier about tailoring an approach to an individual, because that individual has to be able to reflect on the encounters, opportunities, and experiences that they've had. They have to reflect on their own interests, their own skills, and their own aspirations, and they match the two together. And so we see a positive impact on destinations. That impact increases for young people in the most disadvantaged of circumstances. We see increased awareness of pathways, and we see more motivated young people who are making more informed decisions, which again leads us to those destinations. And just one final thing on career readiness, we've mentioned that quite a bit. We see now a 20% increase in career readiness between the age of 11 and the age of 16. We take a data source of the Future Skills Questionnaire in England, which has had 100,000 student responses to be able to say that with some confidence. So the benchmarks inspiring the creation of well-structured, well-sequenced career programs led by trained career leaders, and now improving destination outcomes for young people.
Anthony?
Yeah, this is the key question for us, really. This is where we earn our money, and it is. I mean, and it's a tricky thing to do. Kind of following the destinations through. Now, yes, we have to do it, and the best way that we can do it is through randomized controlled trials, which follow young people over lots of time. They're expensive. There's some big ethical issues about what you don't give to your control group. You can use longitudinal data sets, which are very expensive, and then you have to wait all this time. I mean, they do show us some really interesting things around impact. So I can show you that, we can find lots of consistent evidence about higher earnings. Those earnings are between 5 and 10% on average, more at age 25. If you're engaged in your exploration, your experience, your thinking, these different aspects of it, probably if they combine, there will probably be even more than that. But it's difficult to do that because the data gets too small and the analysis gets too difficult. But these are big impacts, and so we do need to invest in those, and it's great that we see those investment happening here in Hong Kong. But there are some other ways we can ask schools to follow their students, but then there's always a bit of a trouble about, the ones who are probably most in need are probably the ones most difficult to follow. One thing which I'm really interested in is let's ask the young adults themselves, in their early 20s, they've been through the education system, so they've been through what the schools did to prepare them for their careers. Let's ask them what worked. What was most helpful to them? That's the user experience now. And we've done that in a few countries now. Get some really interesting results. We can see really strongly in this data that the engagement which they had with employers and workplaces was especially valuable to them. We find in many countries, maybe a bit less in Hong Kong where everybody wants to go to university, but they really would have welcomed much more help and support in their transitions. And if I have one criticism about Gatsby in the UK, it should be more focused on enabling those transitions, so if young people want to go straight into work. But we can use these sort of, these approaches, and that's much cheaper. It's very quick. You can get your data sometimes within weeks with good samples, and you can see how qualities are playing out for different groups. But I think we need to be really curious because we put a lot of energy into providing resources for young people, and then we only know if they work 2, 3, 5, 10 years later. And that's where we really need to be gathering the evidence. But the good news is, when we do gather the evidence, we learn an awful lot very quickly that the core elements of guidance work really very well. And that allows us to have a more sophisticated understanding of what's happening and allows us to conceptualize it better.
Elsie, your question is for OECD, but I hope that I can still join in.
Local, no, she actually asked about the local context. Local context, yeah.
Okay. You know that I have been so engaged in doing this kind of destination analysis. And yesterday, actually, Vero is here. He's from Canada. And also Bonjour from South Korea, he's also here. So we are doing some comparative study, and we are following young people. So here I like to mention that destination and study is really important. But the key point is that we need to have identifier to keep following the young people. And it's not only a time point. So we are not just measuring whether now he's working or not. We need to look into the details, like what kind of job he's taking, whether or not it is a decent job, whether or not it's aligned with his VASK, whether or not he is happy. We are not only measuring income, but measuring some other aspect, just like Andreas yesterday and inspire us, resilience. We need to have this kind of holistic kind of perspective. So right now, the club is accumulating this kind of data. So we hope that later on, with those kind of sophisticated analysis, we can have something coming out. So today, I just share with all of you some of the initial findings. And actually, right now, you are delving inside into the dynamics. And actually, I will find that the club model of expanded notion of work, expanded notion of success and talent, it is happening. We can also notice that young people are flowing with the support of social worker. They're having this kind of step-by-step transition. So later on, I think we can move along with this kind of model building.
May I?
There's a follow-up here. Follow-up from Elsie?
We're over time, but since it's Elsie, we can keep going.
Yeah, I understand, sorry. I just want to add a remark to both Anthony and Stephen's sharing, because I think tracking the destination is really important, because how are we going to prove the investment of a quality CLD makes sense at a social level? Because I've seen some of the data, but not too much, is to show that if young people have quality CLD provision at school, and then there is data showing that they are able to have a successful transition in terms of they are able to have finding a job more easily, they progress more quickly, and then because they're likely to find something that they are engaged, they like, and then at the workplace they are more productive, they have less sick leave, and so the whole society actually improve the health course, and then the productivity is better. And then yesterday I see that there are some data showing that there is prolonged school to work transition, which means many of our young people, they just keep studying. Studying is good, I like studying, but what I think we should, whether these young people are making the informed decision. So it's about the productivity of the whole society. So I just want to add this, data is really important, and longitudinal tracking is really important. So if you have any advice, how are you going to do that? I'm happy from the trust perspective to know more, how, from the funder perspective, how we are going to support this meaningful work. Thank you.
Stephen's going to jump out of his chair, so go ahead.
You did address to another Stephen, right? Okay, because you know school actually have basically school is the biggest population for the youth, really. And we now, just for the first batch, already got 6,000 students collected during this Form 4, S4. And then we now, luckily, we patiently have wait till they're already starting to leave schools in the first 2 years. So we already, that's why I actually, at the end of my presentation, there's a tracking going on. And the question asked is similar to what Anthony asked, is sometimes ask them retrospectively what's going on, but also what are the decisions now they're facing, and also the future. And also sometimes we also will go for the ones who are not actually in education, maybe. And all these will be a kind of a, but that's only just the start, 6,000. At least we got this done, that will be a good message to the society. And we can learn from the UK case, because we try to tie that with the social mobility. And this is one of the strengths that we haven't got. We start from youth and we start from education. But we have one jigsaw hasn't been really there. It's about economy and also the social mobility, which we need to find out more about the solution. Yeah. So that is my answer. So we will try to use that to see if anything's happened. But that is a next step. We need to wait for the fourth year or fifth year?
Yeah. I mean, Elsie, that's a brilliant question. Because what we would think is happening here, if a young person's being paid more because they've had richer CLD and they're in school, that seems to be the cause and effect. Well, employers ought to pay people more. We theorize they pay people more because they're more productive. That's what we think is happening. If they're less likely to be NEET, if they're more happier in their work, they're likely to stay longer. This links to productivity. Now, as we get a better understanding of these hard outcomes from hard data, it allows us to think about a return on investment model. And we can start calculating this at a societal level. And in the past, we've not been able to do this. And politicians have always been a bit skeptical about career guidance because, is it going to pay off? Is it a good investment? Seems a good idea, but now we can actually start moving in that direction. We've got much, much better evidence than we've ever had. And if we think about return on investment, we can start calculating for every Hong Kong dollar you put in, you can expect over the next 10 years to get 10 Hong Kong dollars back. That's an example. I don't know if that's true. In higher taxes, lower welfare benefits, lower sickness, greater social happiness. And this is where I think that will give us a much better idea about what's an appropriate level of investment, kind of for this area. So I think that's super exciting. And Tracy here, who wants to get into economics, that's a brilliant question for an economist to look at.
Yes. Another thing is in our tracking 6,000, we got DSE results, the most important factor, in order to change the paradigm and mindset.
And last little thought is, it is, to Elsie's point, very much about job satisfaction too. We do want to make sure that people are happy with what they're doing. They have made the right decisions, not just economically, because that is going to lift all tides, right? And
all right,
someone's going to rip us off stage, so I think we should
I'm
probably
afraid
go.
we'll have to wrap it there. Elsie, thank you for squeezing that extra wisdom out of our panelists. Of course, thank you very much to all of our panelists, especially to Mr. Gibson. We realize that it's your Friday night at around 3 a.m. right now, so thank you for joining
Thanks,
us.
Ryan.
Thank you.
Dr. Mann, Professor I, and Dr. Yip, and Dr. Fox for moderating. If we could invite you guys to take a photo now, please step in front of the coffee table.
喺度再一次咧感謝 Mr. Gibson、Miss Dr. Mann 藝教授、葉博士同埋 Mr. Fox 為我哋帶嚟咧非常精彩嘅分享同討論啦。呢個時候咧可以望住我哋大會攝影師先影一張嘅合照。
All right, looking at our floor photographer, please. Big smiles. Thank you very much to our panelists. Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our second keynote of the conference. We will now take a short break, a short coffee break, and then we'll come back for our plenary session, Prepare Early, Connecting Education and Employers in Support of Emerging Job Roles.
咁多位喺我哋短休過後咧，就會有接住落嚟嘅討論，會係關於年青人點樣探討新興嘅工種。咁我哋轉頭見啦。